Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. Well, let me introduce my guest who is here with me this morning. Again, part of our monthly commitment to CHIC, the Community Health Improvement Council here in San Juan County. Kristen Santesson is here. She is with the San Juan County Early Childhood Coalition. And good morning to you. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
You bet. It's an exciting topic and an interesting thing to be talking about because there's a lot of attention, I think, being focused on early childhood education in our state and in our county. We've had numerous programs, I think, about it, and we've seen more, I think, state focus on this issue. There's now a state cabinet level early childhood education, early childhood department at the cabinet level, and certainly some more funding coming to help support early childhood efforts throughout New Mexico. And I guess that is maybe part of why this coalition exists, is to try to figure out what we need and how best to achieve it, things like that. Give us a little bit of a background.
Yes. So the New Mexico Early Childhood Department supported a grant it's 2 years ago now in the making, I think, of several coalitions, which would really serve as kind of a bridge between local and state communication and advocacy work. And so the coalition's job here in San Juan County was really to establish a collaborative of community members to support children just thriving in our community, young children and families, and then support the advocacy work at the state level for what we could do to make system change within our state and our communities.
I see. So this is a volunteer organization.
It's a volunteer organization. We've had some fundings to sometimes offer stipends for different events and things that we have going on. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's mostly made up of a group of volunteers who just have a strong passion around tiny humans and their families and really supporting them to be healthy and thriving in our community. Right.
Well, and I think the research is showing that the better these tiny humans are doing, the better they will be doing as larger adults, right? And then Absolutely. That cycle will hopefully continue in future generations too, right?
Right. Yeah, we have to start writing the first language when they're tiny. So their most formative years in their development are between the ages of 0 to 3. And so we really want to really establish a very strong foundation as they're growing, because we all grow up to be adults, and
right.
all of that has an impact for sure.
Very true, very true. And so with the work that's been done so far and the work that's still to be done, you have been looking, the coalition, not you personally, but the coalition has been looking at kind of what's available in San Juan County, maybe what some of our strengths and weaknesses are. Is that kind of where things stand at the moment?
Yes, so we did a community needs assessment, and so we did several dialogue circles with families in different areas of our county, and then we also did some different type of survey style type of things. But what we found is some of the great strengths is we just have some awesome parks geographically. In Farmington, of course, if you live here, that's a great support. The rec center, the access to kind of just recreational spaces in general, to be outside the river,
right.
Our proximity to Colorado and what we can do there. San Juan College just really gives a great space for families to further their education and all that the college family events that they offer and everything else that we have going on. And then we have such a diverse culture and community that we really can start to learn from each other and start to support, what does a collaborative community look like, and how do we bring in everybody's lived experience to really support change here? Right.
All those things really positively affect a child's development
Absolutely.
And upbringing, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and development, right? And so that's important. But there are some things we need to work on too, right? And that's also part of the coalition's job, is to kind of look at those and try to figure out ways or provide maybe resources or ideas to fix these challenges too, right?
Right. So we really come together, and our idea is in addressing some of these is to really think about everybody's lived experience, and through those lived experiences, what can we do what can we learn and how can we do better.
Right.
And so some of the things we're working on is access to high quality healthy foods, access to high quality health care, access to resources and services, and then of course just all around community outreach. What does our community need to really support young children in our community? And we really wanted families. All of us kind of exist in families, and they all take on different forms, and all of us have lived experiences, professional, just normal daily living that we go through. And so the idea is for the coalition to really have a place where all voices and experiences are shared, so we can really learn from each other, and it's not an isolated group. So we really invite all community members who are invited to partake in these conversations and be a part of this process. And then we kind of take things and put them out into action and into plan into the community. I
see. And that's the part of the coalition, that it is always, I guess, growing, and you're always looking for new members who want to be a part of this coalition. There's room for more folks as well then, right, to add their voice to what you're talking about. Yes.
So if you're interested in ever being a part of what we have going on, we do have 2 social media pages right now, and we're working on getting some radio ads out to our tribal communities. But you can research us on social media. It's the San Juan Early Childhood Coalition, and all the contact information and just getting in touch with us. That's the easiest way, I think, to find us.
Okay. And there's an event coming up in Aztec in a couple of weeks that we'll talk about in just a moment as well. But I wanted to ask you, too, about, you mentioned some of the resources that are available or maybe not so available. And, of course, we think about San Juan County, and depending on where you live in San Juan County, really, I think, says a lot, too, about what resources are maybe easily available and maybe what are a little more of a challenge to maybe have access to. And if I'm in the middle of Farmington, I have access to healthy food, and I have access to a lot of maybe childcare opportunities and the library and other things, whereas if I'm out in the rural part of San Juan County, that's a little bit more difficult to get to those things. Not impossible, but difficult. And that's some of the things you're talking about.
Absolutely, yes. So some things we're trying to think of is how do we take resources into communities, but also what's the feeling around accessing those resources, and how do we start to mediate that partnership so that it feels acceptable too, because sometimes we have our best intentions, but that's not always the perception. And so just making sure that people have access, but also feel really good about what they're accessing when they get to do that. And so we're lucky that we have this great county with this great diversity in this great geographical region, but at the same token, like you said, it really does present some challenges, especially for our rural communities with access to, everything's on the internet, but you can't access the internet or office hours or even transportation and getting to places. So thinking more broadly about how do we have mobile units where we can actually meet families where they're at and that sort of thing.
Right. And this includes certainly the parts of the county that are on the reservation as well as off reservation. And there's still rural areas off reservation as well as on. And so this is all part of this ongoing conversation.
Yes, and it doesn't stop. So the work those are pretty hefty topics that we talked about.
Right.
And it really will take our entire community, I think, to come together to start to kind of support this effort in making these more accessible and working for families. But it's a great start. And I think just having these open conversations where we come together in a very collaborative space is extremely helpful.
Right. One of the things you also mentioned was the healthy food idea. And we know that there are a lot of kids and families who live in what we call food deserts, right? They don't have close access to maybe healthier food options. And so your group was just at the Growers Market not too long ago, and that's another great example, I think, of how folks are working to get these things maybe to some of the other rural areas, because there's now a mobile Growers Market. There is the Harvest Food Hub in Farmington, and if you can get to Farmington, you have access to that food when there's not a Growers Market. And so all these other things that are kind of putting some of the pieces together to solve some of these problems, or at least make them less challenging. How's that?
Yes, and SNAP too. You can now double your SNAP benefits at the farmers market, and they always have a booth there. And that was super exciting to see for families being able to go out there and.
So the excuse that healthier eating is more expensive maybe doesn't go as far when you can double your SNAP dollars at the Growers Market.
Yes, yeah, you can get some and great vegetables it was the first day of the
Right.
growers market that we were there, but there was already some great produce out
That's
there.
wonderful
so
to see.
exciting.
Yeah. So lots of opportunities, at least in
Yes.
that regard. But there's still work to do. And that's part of the coalition, right? And why you all are meeting and talking, and you're working with other groups in the community. We talked before we came on the air this morning about the 100% San Juan County group, and their goals are, I think, kind of similar to some of the coalitions, right? To try to work and help children in these families.
Very similar. So they have their 10 vital services, which cover all the same components we found, for areas we found in our strategic plan and our assessment. And so Barbara Tedrow runs the early childhood sector of the 100% community, and she's supporting a collaborative group within our coalition. And the coalition really is all about collaboration. So if there's any other groups that are trying to tackle things, we really encourage you to attend meetings and come together where we can work alongside and say, how could we support the tiny human part of this project? And you guys are doing part of the other, but we can really bridge those, that silo. We don't have to operate alone. We can operate in congruency with each other.
Sure, that makes sense. And a lot of your funding is coming from grants. Is that kind of where most of it comes from, even though you're mostly a volunteer organization with your individuals, but it's the grant funding that is helping to support some of these initiatives?
Yeah, so the New Mexico Early Childhood Department awarded the coalition a $300,000 grant. And there's more funding to come, so we're really excited that there's going to be continued opportunities. And as we get going, we know that is just a start, that we're going to need more funding in the future. And so we're hopeful to dive into other grant opportunities that will really support making these types of changes that are necessary for our community.
Right. Very exciting. Now, talk to me a little bit about this event that you have planned in July, later on this month, in Aztec. You'll be at the Aztec Ruins.
Yes, we're going to be at the American Indian Cultural Arts Fair on July 15th this month. And so what we do is we're having community play dates throughout the region. We were in Farmington last month, and then this month we'll be in Aztec, and we hand out play kits. So as you come and visit the fair and explore the ruins, you'll have a little play kit that will just give you some ideas of how you and your children can interact and just create some fun while you're in these spaces together, because there's no better gift we can give our kids but our presence and our time, and it goes a really long way. And so the coalition's really just trying to get out there in the communities and support these play opportunities between family members and their kids. So Aztec in July, and then look for further opportunities. Our plan is to do a play date every month. You'll find us somewhere handing out just free kits.
Nice.
For you to play wherever you're at.
Right, and these are free, as you mentioned, and they're mostly, are they geared at younger children, or are there things in there for kids of all ages? What would you say?
Yeah, I think, we focus on birth to 5 for sure. But at the farmer's market, we did a scavenger hunt, and we had kids of all ages doing it. One of the questions was to interview a farmer and ask him or her, how their crops are grown. And so I think anybody can kind of access their inner child and would enjoy it. So
okay.
we won't say you're too old. We'll give a play kit to anybody.
Nobody turned away. While
No.
supplies last,
Yes.
is what they say, right?
Yes,
so
absolutely.
There you are. And I find that there's a lot of some things when you start to think about it, of learning opportunities when you have kids in the house and are thinking about, how to make that into maybe a fun learning, not that they're going to school or having to really struggle, but even maybe working on in the kitchen or something, or putting things together, that there are things that even some younger kids can maybe help with and be learning at the same time.
Absolutely. Every moment that we respond and are present with our kids is an opportunity for learning. And so these little just moments of starting to see ourselves, it doesn't have to be what we think of traditional schooling, but really just that playful moment of engaging with our kids really is just, like I said, a very beautiful gift that we can give them in their development. Talking to them, asking them questions, being playful, creates, I call it joy juice, but creates all these good feelings in your brain that really support healthy development.
Right. And you mentioned, too, that the most important years of development are that, is it 0 to 3, did you say?
0 to 3,
They're like little sponges, aren't
Yes,
they, at that time? Isn't
absolutely,
that what they're kind of
yes.
absorbing everything?
Everything.
And we want it to be mostly positive, not negative things that they're absorbing at that age, right?
Right. So we're basically creating the neural pathways that get their brain primed for learning during those first 3 years of life. And so we're starting to really teach their brain, is the world a safe place? How do I respond? Can I think, right? Can I access the higher parts, functions of my brain? And so all of these just playful moments and engaging start to teach the brain that, this world's an okay place. When I first got here, it was a little scary coming out of the womb and into this
Right,
this
really
world.
bright, and a lot of
Yes.
noise. It's a very noisy place.
Yes, and so these moments really start to establish that the world is safe and healthy. When we feel safe inside and we feel healthy inside, we really can access the more executive function of our brain, which is what we need for optimal learning opportunities.
Right. And so by the time they hit kindergarten, they are kind of ready to go, right? And their brain has those pathways developed to try to interpret what they're learning at school.
Right.
Still in a fun way.
It's still a foundational part. Your brain actually isn't fully developed till the age of 24. And so
I've met people whose brains still aren't fully developed after 24, but that's another show.
Yes,
that's a totally
another
other
segment.
show. Yes, ma'am.
But it's a foundation for sure that we start to lay, and so that way when they do start school, they at least can start to focus and regulate and do everything that's required for them in an academic environment.
Right, and they can kind of think about these concepts and really try to understand them maybe a bit easier because they've had some of this earlier development.
Yes, absolutely.
And so that's the work that you are doing with others in the coalition.
Yes, it's a community project for sure. We don't stand alone. There are so many individuals that give of their time so willingly and so graciously, and we really couldn't do any of this without them. We have an amazing grant coordinator, Rita McGrath, who just really keeps us going and makes sure that we're moving things forward, and who does a phenomenal and a beautiful job.
But you, like the others, are volunteers, right? So this has to be a
Right.
labor of love for all of you who are involved with the coalition.
Absolutely, it's a deep passion of mine for sure. So I love tiny humans. They're my definitely my heart is there with them, and really because it's such a foundational. This is where we start, and so when we're writing this, I always say we have to write it as their first language. But when we create safe and healthy spaces for our tiny kiddos, they can really grow up and thrive, and so really supporting those efforts.
Right, and I think as I mentioned at the beginning of the program, this really is somewhat transitional and foundational change that we're hoping to bring to our state, to our communities, with these better outcomes for these tiny humans, as you say, that maybe can do better in school and understand some of these things, and then excel in their lives as they get older. This is part of what we're talking about, kind of the long game here.
Absolutely, yep. We have to invest in our. It's not. Starting when they're young, we just don't have to do as much repair later, right? So
Right.
we start and we lay this really strong foundation, and then they're able to really grow and be successful in life. And it doesn't mean repairs can't happen, because absolutely we're all resilient and we're all building. But we just want to start from the very beginning with healthy practices and healthy communities. And the change that the coalition is looking for is exactly what you said, transformational. And so we are really looking for a level of depth to support the community, but also really advocate, why don't our systems work? And what are we learning from the very valuable people in our community and their lived experiences? Because you guys are the experts in the community. And so really learning that and taking that to the state and saying, there's a whole bigger picture that we really need to understand, and let's look at that. And the department is super supportive in wanting to hear that. And I think New Mexico's making a lot of great changes in the field of early childhood for sure.
That's wonderful. We've been talking a lot about these tiny humans, but I think, too, parents play a big role in this, or guardians, or whomever it is who's in charge of raising that child in that family. And you mentioned the term family, I think, has many different definitions. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's important that maybe parents and adults have support in these situations as well, which it sounds like they do, and maybe there's more to come for them.
Yes. So I think as a parent or raising grandchildren or whatever your family dynamic looks like, you are their expert. It's a very intimate relationship when we're raising children. You know what makes them tick. You know what helps them settle. You are their expert. And so first, always just really empowering that experience and knowing that about yourself as a when you're raising children or interacting with kids. And then I think, the State Department is really trying to support extra efforts in making sure that we all understand what these developmental phases look like and the stages, and how can we be the best we can be for our kids.
Right. And by providing more resources to these parents, or grandparents or whomever they are, that may help some generational changes as well, right?
Yes.
That the kids will grow up maybe thinking that it doesn't have to happen this way, or there's a different way to do things.
Absolutely. So, and I know just things that are coming out is more access to high quality pre-K. So there's been a huge expansion across the state. Childcare, most families, the income guidelines are extremely generous. And
Right.
so a lot of families are qualifying for free child care, and co-pays are waived right now, so parents don't have to pay the co-pays. And then there's going to be a big home visiting initiative that's being pushed out, which is just to really get early childhood specialists working in partnership with families from prenatal through their before their pre-academic years, before they start school. And so all of these are starting to come down the pipeline, which the coalition will always support. And then, of course, the department from the state is supporting as well.
Right. So very exciting time, I would think. And this is a state initiative, so we may not be hearing about these things in other states because they're just not doing it, or maybe they're doing something a little bit different. But in New Mexico, this seems to be a pretty important focus from Santa Fe and what we're hearing. And so if there are parents who are listening or watching us this morning that are looking for childcare or trying to figure it out, the message that I keep hearing, not just from you, but from others, is that there should be resources available at a very low, if not reduced cost for parents in New Mexico, for children.
Yes, yeah. And right now, if you qualify for state assistance, the only thing, your copay is covered, and the majority of your tuition is covered. So it's really minimal fees that you have to endure. So having access if you're in a community with accessibility.
Well, there you go.
So, yes.
And that's what we talked about too. And I guess too, there are still maybe some wait lists in some areas as well. And so I think as we are building capacity or expanding capacity, that is some of the things that we're also talking about by making it available to everyone who needs it and wants it.
Yes, and different options, because some people prefer a center-based option, also having home-based option. And the department is very supportive of both. So even I know in some of our tribal lands, home-based is more preferred, with family members and neighbors and things like that. And so just offering supports of how can we establish more home-based options as well as, center-based or community program options too.
Right. And these are all the things that the coalition is working towards.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, it's a big job, but we appreciate you and the folks who are working with you and the other organizations that you're working with to create better outcomes for our very tiniest humans.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. We're so glad to get to share this news. And check us out if you're interested. Come see us and join our group.
Indeed. Thank you, Kristen. That's Kristen Santesson, and you'll be at the Aztec Ruins again on July 15th.
Yes.
For their Native American Virtual Arts Festival, I think is the name of it, right? And folks can meet you and see you and learn more about what you're doing out there at that event, and you'll be at more events throughout the each month, it sounds like.
Yes, sir. Look forward to seeing everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thank you.
Good to see you. My guest this morning here representing our commitment to CHIC, the Community Health Improvement Council here on KSJE. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.